Hello, everyone, and welcome to the November edition of Techspert Talks. I'm Troy Rainey, and I'll be your host for today's session. Today's Techspert Talk session is managing Qlik Cloud remotely using Qlik CLI with our own Frank Savino. Frank, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, Troy. Thanks for having me this week. My name is Frank Savino, and I've been with Qlik for 11 years of service now. I'm now working on the Qlik adoption team, so I'm helping all of our customers adopt Qlik Cloud and services and so on. Today, I'm going to be talking about Qlik CLI.
Yeah, Qlik CLI, and I know you're going to take us through a demonstration and talk about how that can be used to remotely manage spaces, apps, users, roles, all things with a Qlik Cloud tenant. But can you summarize for us what Qlik CLI is?
Sure. So basically, Qlik CLI is a way for you to go into a command line interface and save yourself a lot of navigation if you have a lot of activities to perform in Qlik Cloud.
So, what are some common reasons why this might be helpful?
Qlik CLI can do a lot of things as you see here, and this is the Qlik dev page that shows Qlik CLI APIs and commands and so on and so forth. But we're not going to be doing all of this. Like some of the things you can do, reloading, some of the space activities we're going to be doing. We're going to focus on a bunch of these space activities today.
So, is this command line interface meant to make things simpler with less menu navigation, kind of eliminating the need for clicking through different pages of settings? Is that the idea here?
Yeah, it's easier. It's a good idea for anybody. If you're new to command line, this is something you can use to take care of actions quickly because there is a little bit of waiting time when you're in the cloud or when you're on any website for that matter, when you're going from page to page. So this
Right.
avoids all that extra navigation. And so this is why it's a good idea for anybody to get familiar with this tool.
Just so I understand, to use Qlik CLI, do you have to install something first?
Yes, Qlik CLI does need to be installed first, and this is how to install it.
Awesome. And I see on that article there's even a couple different ways to do it, but there's a video and steps. And yeah, we'll definitely include this link so everybody can go through that. And are there any prerequisites to be able to use Qlik CLI?
Absolutely, and those will be here. Just tell you quickly, you need to have tenant admin access, and you need to be a developer in order to create API keys.
Okay, so those two basic steps, the role of tenant admin on Qlik Cloud and be able to create and have an API key and be able to create API keys. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. How can we check to see if that developer role has been assigned?
Sure, great questions. So I'm just going to the administration console, and let's go over to settings. If we scroll down to API keys, this switch needs to be turned on.
All right. Is that turned off by default?
It is turned off by default, so you need to have that turned on.
Okay. What other settings? You mentioned the role. Where would you allocate that role?
Sure. So you can use Qlik CLI to allocate that role. We haven't taught you how to
Oh.
do that yet, but you can do it here, the users panel. Come over, just go to edit roles. When we scroll over, and here's the developer role.
So this is one of those details about finding the setting and scrolling that you would be able to avoid if you just use the Qlik CLI command.
There you go. That's exactly right.
What about the API key you mentioned?
To create an API key, let's go back to settings. You need to turn on your API keys so you can actually generate a new one here.
All right. What are some of the common commands that we're going to be starting with today?
Sure. So the common commands we're going to work with are contexts, which is the name for a connection to a tenant that we'll be showing you how to set up today. Another one, the ls command. We're going to see that a lot today. The -q is an important flag on a command. And then, of course, the -h will enable some additional information about the command that you're in.
Okay, can we start with setting the context? What does that mean?
Okay, so great question. So a context is a connection to a Qlik Cloud tenant in Qlik CLI. Context is not the tenant itself. It is just a connection. You can do a Qlik context init to create a new context.
Okay, just let me wrap my head around it. So you're sending commands using the command prompt to your Qlik Cloud tenant. The context is just setting the framework for which tenant those commands should be applied to. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so when you've done that and you've set up your tenant, you can actually do a listing of all your tenants. So for example, you can do a Qlik context ls and paste that in there. And so this gives you a listing of all the tenants. And you can see on the current column here, which tenant you're actually managing.
So what command do you use to change that connection?
You do another command called Qlik context use. And what you want to do here is use the name of the context that you want to switch to. If you're familiar with command prompt, you need to highlight over and click enter to copy, and then right click to paste. Click enter. Now we're going to do another ls command. Now watch the current column. You can see the current column is changed. The star appears for the my new name. And so now you're managing this tenant here.
Okay.
These names are not tenants themselves. They're just connections to these tenants.
And how do you change the name of those connections?
So when you do a Qlik context init, you enter the URL, this part of the server path is used as the name initially, and then you can do a rename. And right now it is called my new name -1. Click enter to copy that. Right click to paste. Let's say we want to revert back to its original name. We can do an ls to see if that worked. It is no longer called my new name. It is now called OST, ending in qlikcloud.com.
Very cool. All right. So you showed us how we can switch between contexts and how to verify exactly which one's being used. How can you send a command to create a new space in the tenant and start managing spaces?
Yes, we're going to create a space, but we want to look at all the spaces. All we need to do is, I can just type that in here quickly. Click space and an ls. It's going to give a list of all the spaces and all their properties and the roles that can be assigned to the spaces. I know you asked me about adding a space, and I'm going to do that in a second, but I'm going to go ahead and remove a space first. Click space RM.
RM is for remove.
Right, and then we just put the space ID in here. So let's grab the space ID.
That's a lot of information there. It's kind of confusing. How do you know what you're looking for?
And this is the tricky thing about CLI. You're going to see long strings of information.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why quiet command is going to be useful as well. Let's just bring up another command prompt. Qlik space ls, output to a file, .text.
Okay.
Here are your spaces. So you can just kind of scroll through. The space record starts at create at.
So everything from that bracket on is about one specific space.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the fourth row down inside of this record.
So that's the space ID.
Yes.
All right. So then I can see the name fifth from the bottom. So I'd be able to identify what space we're talking about, and you got the ID. What is the command we were doing? Remind me again.
So we're going to start with a remove, and we already have it in there. So it's Qlik space remove and the space ID.
Okay.
We're actually removing this managed space. And keep an eye on the left, and you can see that managed space just goes away.
Very cool. That seems so simple. Now, how do we create a space?
We can do it a couple of ways. And we'll just do a quick copy, and then we pasted it in there, and we have a space conflict name. Because why?
Because we didn't specify that it was managed.
Right.
We said shared right there, shared.
We've copied a different set of instructions. We want to use this set of instructions, which are identical, but have a slightly different name.
All right, I'm following with you now. We're going to create it now, and we've got the correct string of commands, so it's going to create a managed space with that name.
Right, and we have the -Q switch, which means it's only going to give the space ID. So you see here, over there on the left, and you can see the outputted new space ID.
Very cool. And that was, like you said, so quick. So now you've created a space. How do we manage the permissions for that new space? And can you assign members and roles to it?
Yes. Let's move over to another space to take care of this. So I'm going to switch over to our different tenant.
If we're going to adjust a different tenant, you need to first make sure your context is set correctly. So any commands will be
Perfect.
affecting the correct tenant.
Exactly. So to clean things up, it's always a good idea to close the window. Yes, we do want to do a Qlik context ls. Let's figure out where
Listing.
we are.
So you want to change that. So what was the command to change the context?
Qlik context use,
Okay.
and we're going to switch over to this capacity tenant. Well, how do we verify that?
The ls, the list, yeah.
Correct?
And our asterisk has moved.
Exactly. Perfect. Troy, you're getting the hang of this.
I'm learning. This is cool.
So what we want to do is find our space IDs. Qlik space, another ls. Thankfully, our managed space that we're going to add members and member roles to is the bottom of the list. So we're just going to go and find the space ID.
That was fourth from the created at. All right.
Exactly. 66CE ending in FBC. And so we've already documented that here for us. So now we want to go and find the user IDs in this tenant. And this is going to find all the tenant user IDs. So before we do that, let's go over to our catalog. We're going to be working in Qlik CLI files managed space. So over here, let's open up details and let's look at the members. And this is where we're going to be adding our members to.
So we're going to add a user as a member of this space using Qlik CLI. How do you find the ID of the user you want to add?
So we do Qlik user ls.
All right, that's listing all the users on the tenant.
That's correct. So there's this command that we've developed for you for this session today. Click enter.
Oh, I see that filters on just the username and ID. So that's much easier to read.
Exactly. So we're going to be working with these two, and I've already documented them here. So the text will be Qlik space assignment create, then your assignee ID, then your space ID, then the roles. We're going to be adding the operator and consumer role.
Can we define what those roles mean in Qlik CLI? Because those are different terms than those used in Qlik Cloud.
Sure. The items on the left, those are Qlik CLI definitions. Now I've mapped the interface definitions, which you will see here.
It's nice to have that clearly defined, how Qlik Cloud labels the role and how Qlik CLI labels the role and how they match up. So having the consumer role in Qlik CLI means having the can view role in Qlik Cloud, for example.
Yes, and that'll be nice someday when they actually make those the same. But at the moment, they're not. So we're going to copy the code from what we're going to add Michael Wong first.
And we're going to be adding Michael Wong as a member of the Qlik CLI files managed space. And at the same time, we're applying the operator and the consumer roles to him.
Yep. Click enter, create that user. And you see all the properties here. The output doesn't give you the name of the user, unfortunately. It just gives you the properties. Just so you know that the assignee ID is also the user ID. So let's go ahead and refresh our screen. You can see that Michael Wong is now there. The interface definition for consumer is can view, and the interface definition for operator is can operate.
All right.
Yeah, and so we'll do it one more time.
So this is the advantage you were talking about, how you can just copy paste with the different IDs and set up several users quickly with a prepared string of commands.
Exactly. Instead of going through the interface one at a time, you can set it all up and just do a copy paste. Nice and quick. So you're going to add that second member, just refresh the screen, and here we can see Mark Ramos.
And he's got the publisher role. So what if you need to adjust those roles now that you've created it, perhaps remove a role? What is the command for that?
We can do that quite easily as well. So first thing you need to do is find all assignments. So let's get Qlik space assignment, ls, and then the space ID. And we know that the space ID is this space ID. Make sure you have that typed correctly.
So the first time you assigned roles to a user, it created a record in the management of that space as an assignment ID. So to go in and edit that, you have to go and find that ID. Okay.
Exactly. So now we can come in and do an edit. Put your assignment ID in here.
Okay.
Copy, paste. Now what happens here, you'll get a notepad pop up.
So you hit enter and it brought up the assignment record to edit so you can start to adjust the roles?
Exactly. So
Uh-huh.
we're working with managed space roles. Let's add facilitator.
Yeah,
Make
let
sure
him manage.
right? So let's just pop that in here. Facilitator. All you need to do to save it is hit the close button. And here's the output. So just make sure it's on the correct line. It has the comma afterwards. The word is in double quotes. And so if we look at Michael Wong now,
You
with a
got that can
facilitator,
manage. Yeah.
is can manage. So that's how you edit a role.
What if you
So
need
that,
to remove a member? How could that be accomplished?
sure. And that's fairly straightforward as well. So if you want to remove a member, you want to find all the assignments. And since we have Michael up there, let's use his assignment. So that's the last one we added.
A same assignment ID. Did the
Correct.
assignment ID change after you edit it?
Great question. Like spaces, if you delete and re-add a space, the ID for the space will disappear and be changed. When you remove or add a member to a space, their assignment ID will change. We're going to remove Michael entirely now. We're going to grab Michael's assignment ID and we're just going to paste it into some predefined code here. This was his old ID. Let's make sure they're the same, ending in 811, ending in 811. Now we can copy it out.
This command will reopen that assignment record and remove Michael Wong as a member. RM is for remove?
RM is for remove. So it's click, space, assignment, remove, the
Okay.
assignment ID, double dash space ID, and the same space ID that we're using, and enter. And Michael
Yep,
Wong is no longer there.
he's gone.
That is removing and adding space members and member roles and editing roles
That's
in a
awesome.
managed space. And of course, you can do that for shared space in the same way.
Great. Well, all these roles that we've been messing with, they're all related to spaces. Are there commands to give someone roles on a tenant?
Absolutely. Now, I have to tell you up front, all you can do at this point with the CLI is add roles to an existing tenant. To add a role, same thing, gather your information, make sure you're in the context that you want to be working in.
So we're staying with the same tenant.
Yes. And let's look for all the IDs again. So click user ls.
All right, that'll give you a list of all the users on the tenant. We'll see which one we want to play with.
Correct. Michael Wong is still in the tenant, and make no mistake, we did not remove Michael Wong from the tenant. We removed Michael Wong from where?
Yeah, from that managed space. Can we use that filter code you had before to get a list with just the usernames and IDs?
Can actually do that exactly. So if we go back up in our little bits of code here, we can use the same custom code, copy this out, paste that in here.
There we go. There's Michael Wong and his ID.
Yes. So we're going to go and edit a tenant user now. Let's go ahead and grab Michael Wong's ID.
Yeah, Michael
And
Wong has the
so,
benefit of being at the end of the alphabet, so he's listed last.
and that's why we're using them. Nice and handy. Let's just paste that in there.
Okay, so
So
click
let's
user edit and his user ID.
paste that in there. Click user edit. Same thing happens. A little text editor comes up.
All right, so you can go in here. It's listing all the users on the tenant.
Yeah, this gives all the default roles available, but it also gives which roles are assigned to Michael Wong. If you look at your available tenant roles, you can add any of these.
Okay.
Just copy the role,
After the
click
comma
paste. All you need to do now is close,
and
click
save.
save to look at the result.
What was that command? Was that click user ls?
Exactly. Let's do a click user ls. We know that Michael Wong's the last one on the list, which is handy. And we see that the collaborator platform user role has been added.
Very cool. All right, well, now we've shown how to manage spaces, users, roles. Can we show how to add apps to the space?
Sure. If you want to import apps into your current tenant from, say, a development tenant, This is one way you can do it, and you don't have to do all this extra navigation. You can do it all through Qlik CLI. We should bring up the interface. We're going to be adding to this particular managed space right now.
All right, currently there are no apps there. So what's the command to import an app?
The syntax for importing an app is Qlik app import -f, then the path of your file.
And that app has already been exported and ready to be imported.
Correct. Copy our little pre-created code and paste the code in. So again, it's Qlik app import -f, the path to the file.
And what does that -f stand for?
It's filter. The -f is actually filter. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
# space ID and click enter. Okay, and you can see that something is happening.
Oh, we got a forbidden.
So this is expected.
Importing to a managed space is not working.
So this is expected.
Since that's not available, we're going to import to a shared space?
Exactly.
Okay, so you switched over to a shared space since that's allowed.
Right.
And we need to first find that space ID for that shared space.
Right. We know that we're using this one, but just to verify, Qlik space ls. So the shared space is the one
just above the managed space?
Yeah. And how do we find the ID?
It was fourth down from created at. That's what I remember.
Exactly. So we need that ID. It is different. So let's copy this out. It's a little bit of preparation. And we'll grab our ID, paste it in here. And now we can paste the whole line of code. Paste that in there. Click enter. Right. You see here, we did not get an error this time. And look, the file imports and it actually refreshes the window in this case.
Wow. Bam, that was quick. I know it wasn't a big file, but still, it's pretty impressive how easy that was.
Right? And if you know the script, you don't have to navigate every time. You just need to have everything prepared, do some copy pasting, and away you go.
All right, so we've gone through a lot today, Frank. Could you just reiterate for us some best practices when using CLI?
Yeah. Basically, for a large set of activities for multiple users and affecting multiple spaces, and you want to apply roles to bulk set of users, use the CLI. Otherwise, for one-offs, one at a time, just go to the interface.
All right, now it's time for Q&A. Please submit your questions to the Q&A tool on the left-hand side of your ON24 console. And we've already got a few questions come in, so I'll just read them from the top. First question. Is it possible to share the notepad document you were using with all the commands?
Absolutely, Troy. Yep, absolutely. We'll attach it to the webinar. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll just make sure it's attached to the Qlik community page where I post this link. So if you're viewing this video from YouTube, click in the description and there'll be a link there to where you can find that file in Qlik community. Okay,
Perfect.
Moving on. Next question. How are authentications handled when using Qlik CLI? Do you have to log in first?
Yes. We didn't get around to actually showing the setup, but what it is setting up the context. And there's an example of that in the file with the steps and the copy paste commands. We'll also have an example of how to set up a context. And there's also a link that we'll share with you that gives a step-by-step example of how to set up a context to one or more tenants.
Ah, perfect. Yeah, I imagine that's a lot of the setup there, especially when you're installing. We kind of skipped over that part, so that's a good question.
And it is a great question, and it's not hard at all.
Next question. I would like to use commands like this to export and import apps from one tenant to another. Is that possible?
Absolutely, and I have posted more examples of exactly how to do that, very simple steps, and those are part of the attached file for copy paste commands.
Great. All right, we'll just take a look into that file. Perfect. Next question. Are there any security concerns using commands against the cloud?
Actually, OAuth and API key are industry standards. So if you want to read more about how the underlying security works for those, we also have a couple of links, one for OAuth and one for API key security.
Okay, but yeah, that is very secure, and like you mentioned, it's industry standard.
Oh, and one more point on that. There's only two methods available for securing and creating context between Qlik CLI and your cloud tenant or tenants. So it's OAuth and it's API keys.
Okay, and that's basically what's supported by Qlik Cloud.
Correct.
Great. Next question. Where can we find more learning material or examples for using this? You've already mentioned a few examples you included in the document, but what would you suggest?
Yes, so the examples are inside of Qlik Dev under Toolkits, Qlik CLI, and it's Get Started with Qlik CLI. Some great examples again out on Qlik Dev. And of course, we'll give you the link for that.
Yeah, that was one of those pages we showed initially.
Exactly.
Great. So we'll provide the link to that. All right. Next question. Is it possible to trigger reload tasks using a command prompt?
Yes, absolutely. And again, the way to do that is through the examples provided out at QlikDev. There's a specific section on reloads and reload tasks.
Great. Next question. And you kind of addressed this a little bit, but it came up again. What forms of authentication is Qlik CLI compatible with?
Yes, exactly. And as we mentioned earlier, so it's API key and OAuth are the only two available methods at the moment for authenticating, securing, and creating context between Qlik CLI and Qlik Cloud tenants.
Okay, perfect. A few more questions here. Can Qlik CLI export apps with data?
Yes, so examples provided again in the attached document show exactly how to export an app. You can export an app with and without data. And for more options, just again, we'll give you the exact link for the app export section of the QlikDev site. And it's fairly straightforward again.
Great. Well, it's nice to know it's possible.
Yes.
Next question. Is Qlik CLI free or is this an add-on?
So there's no additional costs with using the CLI. However, all activities in the Qlik CLI are still subject to your purchased subscription agreements. So there are
Okay.
limits to what you can do, and those are found in the link that we're going to share with you in the community article.
Okay, great. Next question. Is it possible to run or trigger Qlik automations using Qlik CLI?
Yes, and like many of the other things that you want to do over and available in the Qlik Dev. So just find the section on Qlik Automations, and you can actually do that quite nicely through the Qlik CLI as well.
Great. And last question we have time for today. Is it better to use Qlik CLI or API calls?
Okay, so this is really a good question, and it sums up everything we kind of did today. So you may want to use the API library for QlikDev to automate and schedule large sets of jobs. So that's scheduling jobs. You need to work with your developer also to develop this specific requirements, as there is some
Hmm.
programming and that sort of thing to work with those APIs. Now, using Qlik CLI is nice if you just want to go in, if you have a lot of unscheduled activities like needing to add managed spaces, like 2 or 3 or 4, say, for example, because you
Hmm.
have some new departments, or if maybe you just had a merger or you hired a bunch of staff and you want to add a set of specific roles to users for a space, you can do that with the CLI rather than going into the web UI in order to navigate around. It'll save you a lot of navigation time to use the CLI. And if you, for example, if you want to do a large set of apps to import from one tenant into a production tenant or export from a test tenant, you also use CLI to import to, say, a production tenant or something like that.
Great. Well, Frank, thank you so much for preparing all this and showing it off and going through the demonstration of all these basic things you can do with Qlik CLI. It's very cool, especially for those admins who like to use the command prompt instead of the clicking around and using the user
And
interface.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, what you just said, these are basic commands. There's a ton you can do with this. You just need to explore the Qlik Dev, Qlik CLI toolkit, and away you go and have fun.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this session. And special thanks to Frank for presenting. We always appreciate getting experts like Frank to share with us. Here's our legal disclaimer. And thank you once again. Have a great rest of your day.